So the nicest tactic in this series so far, the move is... Welcome back to the Chess Geek channel. We're moving on to game 6 of Bobby Fischer's 60 memorable games, and this one is really cool because it ends with a tactic which, in my opinion, is the best tactic so far in the book. It's really stunning and gorgeous, so let's jump straight in. I'm excited for this one. The game began with the Ruy Lopez, and it started with many moves of theory. I mean, there are hundreds, thousands even, games in this position of the top level players. h3, super common, knight a5, bishop c2. White is basically playing for this d4 center expansion. Black is trying to gain some space on the queen side, and they do lack space on the king side, but okay, they have the two bishops, and it is considered a fairly solid system. So there's kind of this alternating ideas and strategies of both sides. So we see d4, queen to c7, this common knight maneuver of knight d2, knight f1, and then either coming to g3 or e3 depending on what the position calls for. And here, because White had in mind this idea of taking and opening up the center, the knight decided to come towards the center with e3. So it kind of depends on how you want to play it. If you want to play more on the king side and try to launch some attack, the knight g3 is probably better, maybe coming to f5 later, maybe h5, sort of approaching the king side. But if you're going to play in the center and open up the center, then it does make more sense to keep the knight towards the middle of the board, and that's exactly what happened here. And specifically, this d5 square is very strong now. Once we take, you can see indeed that this square and the light squares in general in the position are one of the key assets that White has. So we have knight to h2. The point is to allow the queen to come in. In this sort of position, both players don't have particularly that much space, so it's really becoming a positional maneuvering game. Both players are trying to, in the most effective way possible, get their pieces into the game. So that's why you saw this move g6 to eventually go bishop to f8 to g7 and get the bishop into the game. This is why you see the move knight h2. All of these might not seem so natural if you're not familiar with these sort of positions, but again, it's just a mean in order to improve slowly the piece placement for both players. So we have rook d8, queen to f3. We have bishop to e6, improving the bishop. Now the knight comes also to g4, where it's much more active. We have takes and h takes. And this is already a very interesting moment. I think a lot of people might not take with the pawn and seemingly ruin the pawn structure, but that is far from the truth, because there's actually a huge purpose and bonus with taking with the h-pawn, which is that the fact that the h-file is now hugely in our possession, and we can take advantage of this, as you'll see White trying to do in this game, by eventually swinging the rooks over to the h-file. And there's a couple of ways to try to orchestrate that. You'll see one of those in the game today. So h takes g4, we have queen to c6, and here is one of the first key moments. So if you'd like, I'd urge you to pause the video and try to imagine what White played, what Fischer played in this position, in order to try to get some initiative and an edge. So the move that he played is g5, which is definitely not the most common move, but the point is actually quite concrete. The first idea is that if they don't take, as you'll see in the game, this knight can now use this newly opened g4 square to maneuver and try to set up an attack. And the key, the tactical justification, is if they do take, which is fine for them, but it's not a complete free pawn, because we're going to get some counterplay. Specifically, this move knight d5 comes, where now the issue is quite clear. This bishop is hanging. If black chooses to take here the knight, we can first take the bishop with tempo, and after they move the rook, then take the bishop, and we want a piece. So they're more or less forced to take, but now we throw in first this check, knight f6 check. Now there's a lot of tactical ideas and complications to consider. Notice if they come to f8, then this pawn here on h7 eventually is lost. They can come to g7, but that also comes with some risks. The best move is king to h8. And if you'd like, you can on your own explore a little more the differences between g7 and h8, but I'll show this one line just to prove to you why taking here originally is not so strong. We can simply take. Their rook is attacked, their rook moves, and now queen to g3. We attack the pawn, They defend the pawn, and queen g5, coming to h6 and threatening mate. And they can't do much about it. If they now try king g7 to stop us, we have various attempts. We can always go for the draw with knight h5 and simply repeating. However, we can also try a variety of other very energetic options. We can go f4 here, trying to open up the king side, maybe going for f5. We can go rook e3 and try to perhaps swing the rook over somewhere towards the king side. So white is really in full control here. They can go for the draw, or if they're feeling a bit more adventurous, they can also have some options to support that mindset. So going back, this is why taking here is not so dangerous, and indeed black does not take, and they play knight to c4 instead. So we have knight to g4. As I mentioned, this was the underlying idea. We want the knight to come in, and in fact, this is such a serious threat now that they have to take. If they allow the knight to come to f6 or potentially h6, but more likely f6, that would be devastating, because after takes, the control on the dark squares, now that their bishop is gone and the bishop is open and our queen can fairly easily swing in, it's going to be very difficult, possibly impossible, to defend against the various checkmating ideas. So after knight g4, takes, as I mentioned, kind of forced, and now we have knight b6. Now, what is the game plan for white? And this is kind of, I think, the second key moment. It's not specifically a move, although there is a move kind of attached to it, but more so the idea. What does white want to achieve? So think about that question for a little. Pause the video for some extra time. One of the highlighting factors of this position is the open h-file. The second that we took, this h-file opened, and we want to take advantage of that. So the move that was played is g3, which is a very cute idea in order, a very cute method to get the rook into the game on the h-file. There were some alternatives, but if your general thought process was getting a rook to the h-file, then that is correct, and that is indeed the correct approach in this position. Now, why did black play knight b6? It seems like they're playing on the wrong side of the board. We're going to attack on the king side. What are they doing on the queen side? Well, their idea is in fact to maneuver the knight in the most effective manner to f8, where it will just try to shield against all of these attacks. So they are trying to defend. So knight b6, and after g3, they played c4. Now again, what are they doing? Why are they playing on the queen side? Isn't the more quicker knight d7 stronger? Well, not necessarily, because, well, we don't have to play on the queen side, on the king side. We can also go a4 now and play also on the queen side. So white has flexibility here, so black has to be really cautious in how they defend. They don't want to immediately drag their pieces away and commit to the defense on the king side, because then we're going to open up the queen side and claim an advantage on that side of the board. But similarly, they can't wait around forever. So this move c4, it tries to stop a4 and basically kind of stop the queen side expansion from being so effective. And next, they want to bring the knight in. So black has a very tricky task in this position to balance the defense on both sides of the board, and white is clearly better for that reason. They have a much easier, more natural game to play. b4 was played here, which is a nice move. If they were to take, by the way, they can't really do that, because we take back with the bishop, and this bishop now is so much better than it was before, and this is going to be very difficult to defend. And for the price of a pawn, that is nothing, right? That is completely negligible. We go bishop e3, and it's very difficult now for black to defend. For example, if they play a5, just a random move, we already go rook c1, and let's say after queen to b4, we can continue now by even just going queen to f3, and there's no real way to defend against f7. So you can already see how the bishop is really powerful, exerting pressure on the king side, and for that reason, taking en passant here is not so strong. And therefore, instead, queen e6 was played, trying to keep the bishop shut and in the meantime trade some pieces. Of course, we don't trade. Queen to e2, a5, we take, queen to a6, going to regain the pawn, and now a4. And again, we're being flexible in our approach as white. We're keeping this pressure here on the king side. We're not moving the rook back, at least not yet. We will eventually, But at the same time, we're playing on the queen side energetically and trying to get some pressure going on this queen. So rook to a8, we take, queen takes, and now white decided to shift focus a little bit. They noticed that the attack here on the king side, not so fruitful. So rook hb1, trying to line up pressure and attack from a different angle, a different front. Their point is actually exactly what you'll see in a second. We trade rooks and we get control of the a file, we get control of the 6th rank, so the attack on the king side is still possible. And in general, especially with the open nature of the position and the 2 bishops we have, white claims still a huge positional advantage. Rook c8, queen to g4, and here there's a couple of options. First of all, the idea of going bishop c5 and trading pieces usually is right if you're trying to defend and if you're on the weaker end of the position, but here it just doesn't work because after takes, we have bishop a4, and similar to the last game that we looked at, they're kind of in zugzwang, which is kind of surprising, but there's not really that many good moves. Knight e6 runs into bishop d7. If they move the rook, then we can come rook c6 and later take on c4. So it's very tricky to navigate this position with the black pieces after you trade off the bishops, and therefore a better option is what was played in the game, knight e6. A final move that I want to kind of mention, if they do nothing, kind of wait around, which they can try in a couple of different ways, that won't be so powerful either. For example, king to h8, what is our idea? Well, now we can already go rook a7, and because the queen on g4 exerts pressure on the rook exerts pressure on the bishop, black's queen is going to be overworked, and we can take simply and then take the rook. So black has to respond to this, which is why they played knight e6. We had bishop a4, rook to b8, rook to c6. Now queen to d8, which is what was played, is the key mistake in this position, ladies and gentlemen. Obligatory was queen to d7 here to keep the position at least somewhat intact, but after queen to d8, there is a nasty tactic here for white. So pause the video. The most important key moment of the video, what do you play? So the nicest tactic in this series so far, the move is rook takes e6. And the point is, well, they can't take, because after they take, we simply are going to take back. Let's say they move, and now we simply take on e5. And there is zero chance that black can possibly hold this position. With the move like bishop d4 coming next, which would threaten mate, there's already ideas of going queen h8, the 2 bishops here, and the queen in such an open position, it's not even a question as to whether white is winning. So going back, black didn't miss this. Of course, this move is fairly natural to at least consider, and black is a great player. They don't miss this. But there was a tactical idea that black thought worked in this position, but it doesn't work. And this is sort of an extension key moment because you had to see this. What do you play after queen to c8? This was the key. The point is the rook is kind of pinned. If it just moves back, we won the knight, but we're losing our queen. So what key idea did white have in this position that justifies this entire tactical sequence? This is really nasty. The move is bishop d7, even more gorgeous. And the point is that after they take, the queen is now on a square where it is undefended and vulnerable, and specifically rook g6 will win it. And similarly, if they don't take, well, we can simply move back or take the pawn with the rook, and we won a knight, right? We won a knight, and we're simply winning. So a very nice tactical sequence here with this final move, bishop d7, which you had to spot in the game. And this does kind of teach you, if we are trying to grab a lesson and apply it to our own game, always look one more move ahead. If in a game you see this nice idea, okay, I take, they take, and I win, well, keep looking and try to find the resources that black has. And once you see a resource, look further again. Always push yourself to look one more move, and if black did that here, they would have not allowed this move rook e6. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new around here. Like this video if you did learn something new from it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.